Okay, so we're going to move on now, trying to get into what is called confidence intervals. That's going to be one of the main focuses for this investigation. And the idea is the following. Remember what a parameter is. A parameter is a summary of population data. So we do have the population data for the fall exam scores. And so that would give us a value of the parameter for the fall students. But we only have our classes data for this semester. We do not have everything. So we cannot calculate the parameter for this data, for this semester. So the thing is, in fact, this is normal. We normally can't find the actual parameter because we don't normally have the whole population data. And so the thing is, we'd like to be able to find out, what we think it might be, even though we don't know what it is. And so again, we're going to use a confidence interval to make a guess. You may or not remember that from the previous investigation. The idea of a confidence interval is to say we believe that the value is somewhere in between these two numbers in this range. That's what a confidence interval is. And it's a 95% confidence interval, so that if we were to repeat this experiment 100 different times, then 95 out of those 100 times we would be right, and we would actually have found where the true interval is, the true value for the parameter. But the thing is, we're not going to know if this semester is one of the 95 good ones or one of the 5 bad ones. So we're still going to calculate it. We're just going to use the rules that we have, and that's just the best answer we're going to be able to say. Okay, so the confidence interval, we're really talking about two parts here. We're talking about the point estimate. That's if you had to pick a single number and say, that's what I think the true value is. So, for example, if I want to try to guess as to what the true average height is for adult males, I might say 5'8". I think that single number is what is right, 5'8". Now, I could very easily be wrong. So if I don't want to give a single number, if I want to be able to say, it's 5'8" plus or minus 3 inches, that plus or minus part, that is the margin of error, right? We had these things in the past. I'm just reminding you of them now. And if I want to find the confidence interval, let's say I said it was 5'8" plus or minus 3 inches. So 5'8" plus or minus 3 inches. Then my confidence interval would be anywhere from 5'5" to 5'11", because that's what happens when you add and subtract the 3 inches there. Okay? So what we're doing in this class is we're trying to find the confidence interval for a mean, and whenever we're doing that, the point estimate is going to be the average of whatever our sample was, and the margin of error is going to be based on how variable we think things are. And we're going to have a multiplier times the standard area, and we're going to talk about that more in the future. So the standard error, we actually saw a formula very similar to this earlier, is you're going to take your S, your standard deviation, and you are going to divide it by the square root of n. That's very similar to what we had in a previous investigation, where my standard error was just 1 over the square root of n. I don't know if you guys remember that, but we had that there. That was on one of your formula sheet for exam 1. And now we're trying to get a more accurate answer. Instead of saying 1 over square root of n, we're going to say s over square root of n. And then we're also going to have a multiplier here, but as it says, we're going to give you that multiplier, whatever it may be we want you to use. So this is saying the same thing, that if you want to find the confidence interval, you start with your point estimate and you add and subtract this margin of error. Nothing new on this slide. And then we need to be able to write a sentence interpreting what we mean by this confidence interval. And I gave you this sentence, again, in a previous investigation, but you might have forgotten it. And the sentence is, I believe, or I estimate, or I am 95% confident that the thing I'm looking for is somewhere in between this number and this number. So I believe that the average adult male height is somewhere between 5'5" and 5'11". In fact, I am 95% confident of that. So you see how we're talking about here, how we're writing these sentences, and I'm very confident that on your exam you will have to write a sentence like this. So it's important that you understand how to do so. And then once we make this confidence interval, we want to make a conclusion based on it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, we have this confidence interval. We would like to see what does that tell us? What does that mean for us? And that's what our conclusion is going to be. So the idea is we want to see whether or not the value is in our interval or not, and whatever the value is that we're going to actually use, whether it be our sample or whether it be some sort of special value that we'd like to have happen. So it says here, what would be a meaningful value of the parameter we are estimating? We have to first answer that question. And that one can be tough. It really depends on the actual problem that you are doing, what value you want it to be. And then after that, we need to say, well, okay, is that value actually in our interval or not?